Work a bit faster than this.
I'm really in the middle of making charcoal, but something more urgent has come up and I need to take a break and build a new wagon for the railway instead. What's so important? Well, it's garlic planting season for us, and this year we're planting more than ever, maybe 20,000 bulbs. So I'm trying to make the job a little easier by building a wagon to move the manure from the muck heap to the garlic beds. This is the way we've always done it, and it's a real pleasure to work with Flora and Henry, but it's awkward too. Backing up the heavy cart is not easy for a horse, even when the ground is dry, and it isn't usually dry. And we can't walk where the garlic is already planted, so the heap is invariably in the wrong place, and then it needs to be moved again. It's no one's fault, it's just that we're top dressing the beds, and even a human could cause damage if they walk in the wrong place, and a wayward horse and cart could wipe out hundreds of cloves in seconds. So we're trying to think of a better way. If we can move the muck to the top of the beds at least, and then use wheelbarrows maybe between the beds to get it where it's needed, that would be helpful. But how? In theory, I could make a few more little wagons and put a box of some sort on the top of each one, but with a double bogie wagon, maybe I can use fewer wheels and still move the same amount of muck and with fewer connections. Also, my hope is that the part between the bogies can be slung down lower, so loading might be easier, and the centre of gravity is lower too. On the other hand, if I do that, the bogies will stick out at either end, so the whole thing will be long. A bogie in the railway world is a set of 4 wheels on a frame. If you link 2 bogies together, you can carry something far longer between them, but only if that long part is free to pivot over each bogie. That's about as much theory as I have on the subject, so I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but obviously we'll need some wheels. Lots of wheels. Well, 8 actually. Now, as I've said before, I don't actually know anything much about railways and trains and wagons and stuff. So all of my railway is made up as I go along, but I do need it to work. Ready? This is not a hobby, it's a serious attempt to save us some money, or even earn us some money at some point. So I'm hoping that wise people will jump in and help me with the design for the rest of this wagon, but I'm starting with the bogies because I think I know how to make those at least. Once they're done, I can see how much weight they can carry and make the rest to fit. You've seen me make these before, so I won't go into great detail. Suffice to say they're made from parts cut on the plasma cutter and slices cut from a rusty 7-inch pipe. They are quite a lot of work. Thanks, Will. It was a great help as usual. A lot of work, but they are very cheap, which, as you know, is essential. And each axle needs 2 bearings. bearings. And as usual, I'm making my own wooden ones because they cost nothing. Of course, they're really just blocks of oily wood, the way bearings were made for thousands of years. The axle spins directly against the wood, so obviously they will wear down in time, but considering the amount of use they'll get, I'm not worried about that. And if they do wear down, I could always replace them with new blocks of oily wood. Each bogie needs a simple wooden frame too. These will take quite a bit of weight, so they're chunky pieces of Douglas fir. At this point I couldn't go any further without working out how the central pivot would work. At the top of each bogie, where the long chassis sits, there needs to be this pivot point. It has to be able to rotate sideways for going round curves, but also hinge up and down unless you have perfectly level tracks, which I don't. So I need something that attaches to the middle and can rotate in two planes. And look what I found! They even come with 3 wheels. They're swivelling casters, of course, but all I need is the frame. If these are in the middle of the bogie, which I think they have to be, then I can see the shape of the arc that the long chassis will make and still miss the wheels. That does depend on how far apart the axles are, the wheelbase, but I'll get to that in a minute. So, with this arc, I can cut out the top plate from thick plywood. And that gives me the frame for each bogie. Very simple, very strong. The bearing blocks are held in place with these pieces of pipe. Also keep the axles in position on the blocks, but unlike all my other wagons, this time the frame is going inside the wheels. So there was a challenge to screw on the axle retainer plates, which allow the axles to drop a little if the rails dip anywhere, but not actually fall out. So for the first time ever, I found a use for this flexible drive for the screwdriver. Very useful. Of course, this is all upside down. The last part is a dab of weld to keep the washers in position. I know purists hate welding on an axle, but the alternative would be a pin right through the axle, and I thought that might be worse because it might weaken it, and there could be a lot of weight on these. The washers keep the frame in the middle of the axles. I greased everything, including myself. And then I took them outside. Here comes the bogeyman. They are surprisingly heavy. Must be all the expectations built in. And hope and rust. Maybe expectations are very heavy. Now, this is just a temporary connector bar to see how they run. See, there's an interesting challenge with double bogie wagons. The one at the front is kept straight by whatever's pulling it, which could be me with a pull stick, or a locomotive, or a horse, or whatever. But the bogie at the back is free to pivot and rotate as it wants. It has to be able to do that for the curves and the points. But in theory, it could easily twist too far sideways and get jammed in the rails, or even ride up and out of the rails. Or at the very least, it could snake from side to side, even on a straight stretch of track. Now, there may be complicated ways to steer the bogies, but I'm just hoping that by giving these a generous wheelbase, they won't be able to snake too much and should stay on the rails. And before anyone tells me again about tapered wheel treads, have a look at the video I made all about tapered wheel treads and why I don't make them anymore. Link in the description. And look everybody, it seems to work. But I was surprised at how well they work. You go along the straights and through the kick switches and round the tightest curve that I have. So you can see that I need to go quite slowly. And they even work being pushed, which I was not expecting. I was sure I'd have to pull these only in whatever direction I wanted to go. But so far, pushing is an option too, so I'm very pleased with that. But of course, they're not finished yet. There's the whole bit in the middle to go next. I'm guessing this wagon might take half a ton of load spread between the 4 axles, but that's really just a guess. I don't want to overload the axles or the wheels or the rails, or me, so I'll have to go easy on it. Now a couple of pieces of angle iron back to back might work for the chassis structure, but supporting what exactly? I don't know quite. I could perhaps make one long wagon that tips maybe, or removable containers like fish boxes that could be stacked perhaps, and could be transferred onto a wheelbarrow base, or perhaps I could even carry the wheelbarrows themselves. If you know how best to do all this, then please let me know. Otherwise I'll just make up something and show you next time.